The scene begins intensely. A woman is dragged into the middle of a crowd, accused, exposed, with no chance to hide. All eyes are on her, and in the hands of some, stones are already prepared to be thrown. There is no fair judgment there, only the certainty of a condemnation that seems inevitable. And as she stands there, at the center, the silence screams louder than any accusation. It's the kind of moment where everything feels like it has come to an end. The law said she should die, and those men knew exactly what they were doing. There was no room for defense, no escape, only the weight of guilt being placed upon her. And maybe, as you look at this scene, you can feel the tension hanging in the air. A tension not only about what she did, but about what they were about to do to her. And that's where the story begins to go deeper. Because this scene is not as far from reality as it may seem. Many people live as if they are in that same place, exposed by their mistakes, trapped in guilt, waiting for a sentence. They carry within themselves what they've done, as if there were no possibility of a new beginning. And even without a visible crowd, they feel the constant weight of condemnation, as if, at any moment, everything could collapse. And the most striking thing is that in that moment, no one was interested in restoring her. The desire was to punish, to point fingers, to prove a point, not to save a life. It was as if her story was just a tool, not a soul in need of mercy. And when the atmosphere becomes like that, hope seems to completely disappear. But it is exactly in this kind of setting that something unexpected happens. Because in the middle of that tension, someone is present, watching everything in silence. Someone who does not react like the others, who does not follow the same pattern. And it is in this detail that everything begins to change, even if no one realizes it yet. Before any word is spoken, before any final decision, something is about to happen. And if you want to deeply understand this turning point that can transform your life, make sure to subscribe to the channel and keep watching, because what comes next will move you. The religious leaders brought her to Jesus, not out of compassion, but with a very clear intention. They were not concerned about that woman, nor about restoring her life. In reality, what they wanted was to create a trap, a situation where Jesus would have to choose between the law and mercy. It was a dangerous, calculated move, where someone's life became a tool. And that reveals much more about them than about her. The law was clear according to what they knew. That woman should be stoned. There was no room for interpretation, no space for emotion. It was about following the rule, carrying out what was written, executing the sentence. And at first glance, everything seemed very correct, very just. But not everything that looks like justice truly is. Because deep down, what drove those men was not zeal for truth. It was the desire to accuse, to expose, to prove that they were right. They were more interested in condemning than in restoring. And when the heart is like that, even what is sacred can be used in a distorted way. This is where many people are deceived without realizing it. Maybe you've seen something similar happen. People using the right words, religious speech, but with the wrong intentions inside. It looks like justice on the outside, but the heart is far from mercy. And that creates environments where mistakes are magnified, but grace never shows up. Places where no one leaves healed, only more wounded. And it is exactly in this setting that Jesus is being tested. They wanted a quick, direct, definitive answer. They wanted him to take sides, to choose one position. But what they didn't realize is that they were standing before someone who saw beyond the situation. And what he would do next, no one was prepared to witness. That woman remains there, at the center, surrounded by men who knew the law but did not know mercy. They were not debating the sin that had already been decided. What remained was the execution. And as she waits in silence, every second feels heavier than the last. No one steps forward to help her. No one rises to defend her. All that surrounds her is condemnation. And then, in the middle of that pressure, all eyes turn to Jesus. They want an answer. They want him to confirm what they have already decided to do. They want him to say yes, so they can act without guilt in their conscience. But instead of answering immediately, Jesus does something no one expected. He bends down and begins to write on the ground. That gesture completely changes the rhythm of the scene. The noise of the accusations loses strength in the silence of Jesus. He does not enter their game, does not react with haste, does not feed the condemnation. While everyone demands a quick decision, he slows the moment down. And that begins to expose something far deeper than that woman's sin. Because instead of focusing on her, Jesus begins to confront the hearts of those who accuse. Without raising his voice, without pointing directly, he reveals a truth no one there wanted to face. The tension rises, not because of doubt about what to do with her, but because of the discomfort of realizing something is being revealed within each of them. And it is exactly at this point that everything is about to change. The story of the adulterous woman explained is not just about an exposed sin. It is about a moment where human justice meets the gaze of Christ. And while that crowd waits for condemnation, Jesus prepares a response that no one can anticipate. A response that not only addresses that situation, but completely redefines what it means to judge, condemn, and forgive. Then Jesus stands up and finally breaks the silence. The crowd holds its breath, waiting for a command, a signal to act. The stones are still in their hands, ready to carry out what seemed right. But instead of condemning, he releases a word that shifts the entire direction of the scene. He who is without sin, let him throw the first stone. That sentence cuts through the atmosphere like a truth that cannot be ignored. It is not a defense of the woman, it is a confrontation with those who are judging. Jesus does not argue about her sin at that moment. He exposes their hearts, and suddenly, the weight of accusation shifts. Now, those who judged begin to feel confronted within themselves. The silence that follows is even stronger than everything that was said before. No one can respond. No one has the courage to take the first step. Because deep down, they all understand exactly what Jesus meant. Each one begins to look inward, recognizing their own failures. And that completely disarms any attempt to condemn. And then something happens that no one expected to see. One by one, they begin to walk away. Without argument, without resistance, simply dropping what they were holding in their hands. The older ones leave first, then the others, until the place is empty. Condemnation leaves without a single stone being thrown. And now everything changes completely. The crowd is gone, the noise fades, the pressure disappears. The scene that once pointed to death becomes a moment of encounter. And there, where there were once accusers, only two remain, her and Jesus. And what he says next will reveal something even deeper. Now the scene is different. There is no more crowd, no more accusers. That woman, who was once surrounded by condemnation, now stands before Jesus. And the silence that remains is no longer tense. It is filled with expectation. Because in that moment, everything depends on what he is about to say. And this is exactly where the heart of Christ is revealed. Jesus looks at her and asks a simple but profound question. Where are those who condemned you? Has no one condemned you? And the woman answers honestly, no one, Lord. She recognizes that something has changed, that the sentence was not carried out. Then Jesus speaks words that echo through time. Neither do I condemn you. This answers one of the deepest questions many people carry. Why did Jesus not condemn the adulterous woman? Not because the sin did not exist, but because his purpose was greater than condemnation. He came to save, not to destroy. But Jesus does not stop there, and this is essential to understand. Right after that, he says, "Go and sin no more." In other words, he does not ignore sin, but he also does not reduce that woman to her mistake. He offers forgiveness, but also points to a new path. This is where many begin to understand. Jesus truly forgives sin, but he also transforms lives. And this is the essence of how Jesus treats sinners. He does not push away, reject, or humiliate. He draws near, restores, and redirects. The message of Jesus' forgiveness is not permission to continue in sin. It is an invitation to a completely new life. And what that means for you is about to become even clearer. Maybe at this point, you have already seen yourself in this story. Not exactly in the scene, but in the feeling, in the guilt, the shame, the weight you carry. And the truth is, this passage was not recorded by accident. It exists because it reveals something that is still accessible today, something that can reach you as well. Because just as that woman stood before Jesus, you can also stand before him without masks, without excuses, without trying to hide what is already known. It is in this place of honesty that something begins to change. It's not about deserving it, it's about an encounter. And that encounter is still available. Maybe you think you've gone too far, made too many mistakes, that there's no way back. But the answer Jesus gave in that moment still stands. He did not begin with condemnation. He began with grace. And that completely changes how you can face your own story. Not as an ending, but as a turning point. Now, there is a step that needs to be taken. Just as he said, "Go and sin no more," there is a clear direction. This can start with simple decisions, leaving behind practices that pull you away, pursuing a different life, drawing closer to God daily. It may be through prayer, reading the Word, connecting with people who strengthen your faith. Small actions that, over time, build a new life. And the question that remains is not about what you did, but about what you will do from now on. Because an encounter with Christ never ends in forgiveness. It always leads to transformation. And this decision is not collective. It doesn't depend on a crowd. It is personal, and it begins within you. That woman arrived there, expecting death. But she left with a new life. Not because she was innocent, not because she deserved it, but because she encountered Jesus. The only one without sin was the only one who chose not to condemn. And this reveals something powerful. Outside of him, there is only condemnation, but in him, there is salvation. Because Christ is not just an option. He is the only way. Maybe you are still trying to fix your life on your own, trying to make up for your mistakes, hide your failures, carry guilt that has already exhausted you. But the truth is simple and direct. No one saves themselves by their own effort. That woman had no way to defend herself. She could only surrender to the presence of Jesus. And that is exactly what changes everything. Because it was not the crowd that defined the end of her story. It was Christ. And he is still the same today. The same who forgives, the same who transforms, the same who points to a new path. But also, the only one who can truly do that. Without him, there is no complete new beginning. Now her story has ended, but yours is still being written. And the question is, what will your encounter with Jesus be like? Will you keep listening to voices of condemnation? Or will you listen to his voice? I do not condemn you. Go and sin no more. That answer is still available, but it requires a decision. If this message spoke to you, don't ignore it. Draw near to Christ. Surrender your life to him. Begin this transformation today. And if you want to keep learning, growing, and understanding more about this path, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because your story can also be completely transformed starting now.